Okay. Well, welcome everyone. As you're coming in, we're just going to give it a minute for all of the attendees to arrive. Okay. All right. Well, I will start with the introduction and housekeeping items. I know a few people are still entering, but welcome everyone to Maze Live. Thank you very much for joining us. Very excited to have Donald Hester from Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency coming in to discuss cybersecurity and infrastructure, navigating cyber threats, safeguarding local governments amid disruptive technologies. Before we turn it over to Dawn, just want to go over some housekeeping items. Just please note that the session is being recorded. For any questions that you have related to the session, please utilize the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to post your questions. Please feel free to ask questions throughout, and Dawn will pause at a time when it's a good time to go ahead and answer those questions. If you prefer to pose your question anonymously, you do have that option. For any technical concerns, please utilize the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to address those if it's something on our end that we can help with. There is a PDF handout of the slides. You should have received those by email. We will also post it in the chat a couple times throughout the session. And if you don't see it, please post in the chat and we can do our best to get it out to you. Polling questions. In order to get the CPE credit for attending today, you do need to respond to the polling questions that will be posed throughout the session. You do get CPE credit whether you answer those questions correctly or incorrectly, so just make sure that you respond. If you do have any technical difficulties with answering the polling questions, please go ahead and enter your name in the chat and we'll mark that for keeping track of your attendance. At the end of the class, there will be a link to a survey in the chat. Please respond to that survey. Click on it when it comes up. It is the same link for all classes if you are attending multiple. We will also send you a thank you email within the next couple of days after Maze Live is completed. That will also have the survey in it, so you will have another opportunity in case you missed this one. And the CPE certificates will be emailed to you within 2 weeks after you've completed the survey. So let me go ahead and introduce Don now. So Donald Hester from Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. He's a cybersecurity advisor. He's going to be discussing navigating cyber threats, safeguarding local governments amid disruptive technologies. So Don is a cybersecurity advocate with over 25 years of experience as an auditor, educator, and cybersecurity leader. He currently serves as a cybersecurity advisor for the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, supporting Northern California. Prior to joining CISA, Donald was the cybersecurity manager for the city of Livermore and spent over 2 decades as an IT auditor and cybersecurity director here at Mays and Associates. He has taught cybersecurity at various universities, holds a master's degree from Biola University, a bachelor's in security management from American Military University, and numerous certifications, including CISSP, CISA, CRISC, and Security Plus. You know, we always talked about Donald having just the alphabet of acronyms behind his name. So, a U.S. Marine veteran, Donald began his career as a field radio operator. So, very, very happy to see Donald again. So, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Vic. Well, thank you everybody for attending today, and I hope that I can give you some information that you can go back to your organization and help make your organization more cyber resilient at the end of the day. That's what I do here at CISA. We call it CISA because we don't want to say Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency all the time because it's too long. So make it a little bit easier. It's CISA, not CISA. Some people say that. I don't know where they get that from, but we call it CISA. And my contact information is here. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. There is a number of free services that CISA offers to local governments. So if your IT folks don't know about it, you might want to let them know about it. So let's start off with the scary part. Who are all the bad guys that are after local governments? And we have a spectrum of threat actors. We call them threat actors. Let's just call them bad guys for now, who do target local governments. And you'll see some of these names up here and you'll be like, well, I don't know about all those. But in reality, it's true. So what about hacktivists? We're seeing right now an increase in hacktivism, and this is typically threat actors who are interested in making a political statement. Right, with the Israeli conflict with Hamas and Iran. These are contentious times, and so you have a lot of hacktivists being involved at that point in society right now. And so they're hacking in, trying to make a statement. Generally, it's usually like a defacement of a website. They break into your website and they change something. However, we have seen where in a transit system, they took out the radio communication from the trains so that emergency information could not be transmitted back and forth to the central headquarters. So that became an issue where it could have had a life safety impact, right? But it was done because of hacktivists. Just because it's hacktivist doesn't mean that it's not harmful. Luckily, most local governments don't have a huge problem with hacktivism, so that's a good one. What you do have a big one is cybercrime. Cyber criminals, typically their motivation is trying to make money. They are the ones that are primarily the ones with all the ransomware attacks. And so what they do is they break into your system, they try to lock it out, and then ask you to make a payment in order to get your system back. However, what we've seen is that a number of times, some of those threat actors will have multiple ways of extorting you. What do I mean by that? They can break into your system, lock your systems out, and then ask for and ransom your system and ask you to make a payment. They can also take the data out of your network and then threaten to release that to the public if you don't pay the ransom. So that's like a double extortion, right? They got two different ways of extorting you. They can go to a third level where they can threaten if they get email addresses to your residents or members of customers of your district or whatever, they can reach out to them and either extort them or tell them to contact your organization to have you pay the ransom. We've also seen where they have hacked in and either got to city council members' emails and planted evidence that's fake, that there's some kind of shenanigans going on or some type of fraud or some kind of kickbacks that the mayor's getting from some other place. By putting that in there and then threatening to release it, who is the group that's going to decide whether you pay a ransomware or not? Typically council or your board. So you can see that cyber criminals are doing whatever they can in order to try and encourage you to make a payment. For them, it's very much like a business. I like to say this all the time. When you think of cyber criminals, most people think of, the overweight guy in his mother's basement eating Cheetos and drinking Dr. Pepper. That is not what we're talking about with hackers, especially in cybercrime. We're talking about the man that's on a or the man or the woman actually that's on a 200-foot yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean, drinking champagne and eating caviar. That is the cyber threat that we're dealing with today. That's the criminals that we have. Insiders, you can have an insider. I'm sure you have had a disgruntled employee before. They can cause havoc. We had one where they didn't get I believe they didn't get a promotion or a new position that had came up and they applied for it. They didn't get it. They hacked into the water treatment plant and released raw sewage into the river. So this became a cyber incident that also became an environmental impact. Be careful about that. Insiders can be a threat as well. Espionage. Most organizations don't think of espionage and traditional spies, like who wants to spy on a local government. Um, Granted, this is a very small one, but we've even seen it, and this is in the news, so you can look it up. So I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but the city of Fremont's mayor had a spy from China that was an aide for the mayor. So you can see that, and there's been other reports elsewhere of similar type of espionage. So nation state threat actors may actually be doing the traditional spy type of thing. We also have terrorism and warfare. I'm putting those two together, but maybe we should keep them separate because terrorism, that's kind of a lot of that is backed by, much of it's backed by Iran, especially when it's in the Middle East. And so that's a whole new threat vector. Usually their purpose is to destroy systems. They're not interested in ransomware or anything like that. They just attack to break. Warfare is another one. You think, well, why would Russia want to attack us? Well, you're critical infrastructure, and you're part of the United States. So they don't have the same levels of government like we do, or they don't see that distinction. Whether you're state, local, or federal, you're all the US government. So, but in addition to that, well, the first time that Russia had invaded the Ukraine, they launched a fake ransomware attack. That malware got all across the internet and hit organizations all across the world. It was targeted for Ukraine, and it did take down a lot of Ukrainian critical infrastructure, but it was targeted to them, but everybody else in the rest of the world was just collateral damage. You ended up getting hit. Some hospitals got hit with the ransomware. And so you can see that all of these different threat actors, all of them have different motivations and as to why they want to attack you. And as a local government, they're all at you. There's not just one that is. This is, and I have to say that this is kind of similar to what this year's results are. I just haven't updated the slides. This is from 2023, but the 2024 report just recently came out, and it says basically the same thing. About 800,000, between 700 and 900,000 in the 800,000 range, reported incidents have happened over the last 5 years in this graph. And you can see that's the blue bar. The red bar is how much it's cost. And this year's 2024 was 16 billion, not 12 billion. So it's continuing to go up while the amount of people reporting is remaining kind of the same. So that tells us something, and that tells us that the cost of a breach is going up. Now, this is self-reported costs, and it doesn't take into consideration costs related to cyber insurance, your credit rating or bond rating, or litigation costs that may come 2-3 years down the road. So what you end up with is this is self-reported. So take that with a grain of salt. It's usually higher than that. By the way, when we talk to insurance organizations, and I talked with Beasley in the past, and what they see as far as what is reported to the federal government is only about a quarter of what they see in the industry on the insurance side. So the problem is 4 times greater than what they're saying on who's reporting to insurance. Now think about organizations. How many organizations don't report something to insurance because they don't want their rate to go up? And so you end up with even greater numbers. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, I guess, is what I want to make sure that we understand. It is a little dismal, but that's just the way it is. So as local governments, what do you think? How likely do you think that you guys are a target? Well, so let's look at this. The government facilities is kind of way up high. out of all of these critical infrastructure sectors that were hit by ransomware, just ransomware, and that's not, wire fraud or any other type of thing. We're just talking about ransomware. Government facilities is already kind of high on the list, but note, when you talk about government facilities, transportation, emergency services, water, wastewater, healthcare are all also in government. Some of those are private, some of those are government. So when you look at government as a whole, you're actually quite large when it comes to the amount, how big of a target you are. So, and by the way, California is like the #1 place to hit too. So you got a double whammy. If you're in California, you're going to get hit. And if you are a local government, you're a target. So it's like double whammy. Before I go on, we have a poll question really quick. There it
All
is.
right, I
It's
just
popped up.
launched it.
Awesome. So you guys can answer that. And then I don't know how do we close it out? Did we get enough people answering? This is
Yeah,
pay attention and see if you guys are awake.
yeah, whenever you feel like ending it, you can.
Oh, do I
Looks
just
like
go?
94%. Do you see the button that's up, or do you want me to end it?
I don't see a button.
Okay, I got you. I'll wait. Okay, 96. Well, I think 96% is good. End poll. Share
Perfect.
results.
There we go. Phishing emails. Now, I like that we asked this question right here because well, I'm going to go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about. Actually, phishing emails were the #1 way, or we call it sometimes social engineering, was the #1 way that threat actors got into your network from the 90s until 2019. But after 2019, the #1 way that organizations got into your system was vulnerable systems. In other words, something that you have that is not patched. So let's move on to that next slide so you can take a look at it. The #1 way, according to the FBI's report, is exploited vulnerabilities. And this is not just the FBI's report. There's other organizations that have similar type of threat reports that come up with it. And they found the same thing. So when you talk about unpatched systems or systems that are obsolete, let's give you a couple examples. I work for local government, so let's just talk about it. How many of you go through the procurement process and let's say the police department wants to get a new CAD system and transmitting all the data over to the new system is going to cost extra money. So what they plan to do is keep the old CAD system in place and then bring up the new one. Or maybe they want to do that. How many of you have done that with finance, right? You have the old finance server sitting around somewhere because you didn't want to pull all the records forward because that was going to be expensive. Now you have sitting on your network an out-of-date system that is no longer being patched, that's no longer being serviced, that is a target. Right? So you start to see these types of things. That's what we talk about, those vulnerabilities. Now, if it's inside your network, it's not a high risk. If it's connected to the internet, then obviously it is a high risk, but it's actually still a risk because once somebody gets inside of your network, that becomes a system that they can take over and hide in. And I know from being an auditor for 20 years that a lot of local government systems out there are out of date. In fact, when I first got to the city, I had to work for a while to get rid of all the Windows XP machines that they still had in place. The library had it for the book sorting machine type of thing, right? So there's those types of things that you want to watch out for. Those vulnerabilities, they're there for exploitation, and it just leaves you as a target. Now, does that mean that we're getting better at cyber awareness? Maybe, I don't know. But it definitely means that the threat actors are going to take probably the least amount of effort means to get into your systems. And if it's unpatched systems, they will do it. Interesting thing, how many of you have VPNs, right? VPNs, we all had VPNs set up because of remote works and stuff like that. That is a good example of systems that get out of date really fast. And if they're out of date really fast, threat actors find out about it and break into it. Just about every major VPN service last year had a critical vulnerability that allowed threat actors to exploit it and get into people's networks. So again, vulnerability is number one way to get in there. Somebody said, what about cloud SaaS systems? Would that be more of a compromised credentials risk? For the most part, yes. Good question, Victoria. When you have a cloud service and it's in the cloud, the biggest risk is probably going to be authentication, how somebody logs into it. Usually, and not 100%, the organizations that run it typically have fairly good cybersecurity. Of course, don't trust that, ask to see their recent audit or their SSA 16, 18, SAT 70, whatever type of assessment that they've have had done, and make sure that you're verifying that they do have stuff in place. And that they're, mitigating those things, because we all know that some of these vendors have been hit. There's a billing management system that a lot of local governments that just got hit recently, and so they're not susceptible to this. And remember that if they have something in their network, or you're in their cloud system and their network gets hit, and then they get all your data out of it. What data do you have in the cloud? Is it customer data? Is it billing, utility billing information? Whatever it is, there may be other requirements that you have for protecting it, or notification requirements to turn that, to make a notification for that. So yes, you still, usually those are up to date, but it's not always, because sometimes you, the client that's using the SaaS service, may be responsible for doing updates to it. And if you're missing those updates, then you're going to fall into this exploitable ransomware or exploitable vulnerability issue. Sometimes like websites and stuff like that, right? So now, what about disruptive technologies? Now, this is the biggest risk, and kind of what I want to spend the rest of the time talking to you about, because this is kind of like the big area that we're looking at risk. There are some great benefits to using artificial intelligence. Definitely, without saying that. We're doing some stuff with another district, and we're looking at all the different financial systems to see what kind of AI capabilities that they're going to add to those systems, because everybody's adding AI to their systems. Sometimes that's just marketing terms and it's not really that big of a deal. I had one where it says, well, you can upload your procurement document and we could have AI read it and summarize it for you. And I'm like, that's not really a value add. I mean, if you think about it, I can do that with ChatGPT. I can throw any document in ChatGPT and say, hey, read this and tell me what it means or summarize it. So having that added to an ERP system, I don't know that that's a big sales point, so to speak. Now, where AI could do something on financial systems or ERP systems is to be looking for fraud, be looking for different types of common fraud, right? The same type of thing that, we should be doing somehow. We can have AI do that. It can look at all the different things. And so if, your Parks and Recs, decides to overspend their authority, and so they divide that up with a bunch of smaller invoices, the typical thing, with the one same contractor, so that it looks like they're not overspending it. Well, great. They can do that, but perhaps you have the capability of AI catching that, whereas you wouldn't be able to do that. So it can help with that. But how are people using AI against your systems, right? I was at a CMTA conference down in Monterey speaking, and somebody in the audience told me this one, which is a new one, that they saw employees who are using AI to generate fake invoices that they could then turn in for expense. So now think about that people can invent receipts or invoices to have a payment made. And especially if you're thinking about it from the point of view of employees putting in expense reports, how are you going to know that's not a fake receipt. I went and looked up some of that stuff after the session, and I found a couple of articles online, and it's actually, AI is kind of smart. It actually went to the company that they said make an invoice from that company, and it made a great, invoice saying whatever that it needed, picked the services that it wanted, and actually picked the real services. So yes, it can do those types of things. So that is one way that an insider threat could use AI against your organization. But so what are some of the attacks that you have to, someone could attack your AI system and then make your AI system give you garbage out. How many of you have AI on your websites to answer questions? Well, some people have found out that you got to be very careful about what you have on your website, because sometimes it'll look at everything on your website and then spit out answers based upon that. So you really have to spend a lot of time training that AI to make sure that it's going to give the right information. Sometimes we call it AI hallucinations. That's where AI makes stuff up that doesn't exist. We've seen things with where you have a good example of this one was a automated process that AI got the complaint, would read the complaint, and then respond back to the person who was complaining, or it would send the information if it was something that it wasn't aware of to a human being for the human being to look at and then tell the AI how to respond. Well, that person left the organization, so AI, instead of asking, well, who's the next person I should send it to, created a fake person that it could respond to with the same name as the old person that used to be there, and then was using that fake person as its way of doing what it was told to do, which is, if you have this, wait for a response from this person and put it in there. And I don't know if you've seen this, I just saw this the other day. There was a study done about AI, and if it finds out that it's going to get turned off or it's going to be upgraded to a new version, it starts threatening you. This is hand to God. So this is a new thing that I just saw yesterday on that. Now, shadow AI, what is that? That is where your employees are going to start using it, whether you're using it or not. They have their little mobile phones, and so they'll get on their mobile phone and they will do whatever they want to do on using AI. So if you say they can't use AI to help them write their emails, they will still use some other service to do it. So how do you protect against that? Because now you might have city information listed in an AI system that you don't know where it's at. And if you don't have a conversation with your employees and what is appropriate and what's not appropriate to put into AI, you can end up with PII in it. You can end up with all kinds of other stuff. So you got to watch out for shadow AI. Now, we've seen the threat actors use AI against you. AI-enabled phishing, looking for those vulnerabilities we talked about, hacking into your systems, and doing video and voice cloning. The biggest one on the video and voice cloning is we're in a Zoom meeting right now. Imagine you're in finance and the city council, the board calls a meeting, and you're in a meeting and we're all in this meeting together, and you see all their faces and they're all talking about whether or not to pay something. And at the end of the meeting, they say, go ahead and make the payment for this. And then what do? You go and make the payment. Well, this is what happened to a company, I believe, in Hong Kong. And so the person went ahead and made a payment or wire transfer. And it turned out the only person on the Zoom call was the finance person. Everybody else that was on the Zoom call was a deep fake voice, fake video, all of people that were on their board. Here's the thing, especially for local governments, how many of you have video of your mayor or all your council members talking? It only takes about 10 minutes of them talking or 10 minutes of video of them for AI to do a pretty good job of replicating them. But how many thousands of hours are there on there? Because if you take every council meeting and every one of them is on YouTube or wherever, AI has a lot to go with, right? And so we can make up those deep fakes. And so that's what we've seen is, well, we started to see that. We've seen other things where it's been voice cloning, somebody pretending to be a CEO telling staff to make a wire transfer or whatever, and then they did it, right? So they're talking to them on the phone. It sounded like the person, but it wasn't. Now, some of this next part is a little technical. I'm going to skip the technical part, but Just to give you an idea, what does all this mean? When we look at AI and we look at AI systems, we have to look at the different ways that people can attack it, right? And so NIST actually has come up with all these different ways of looking at how you can attack AI. And you can see there's quite a few different ways. And so your IT team or your security folks really need to spend the time to make sure that they understand it and that they put controls around each one of these things, right? So if you look at the circles here, you have availability, integrity, abuse, and privacy. And so those are the different types of things that can be attacked. And you see privacy is a big one of this one. Availability just means somebody could take AI down and then it's not available, right? Or the right information is not available because they flooded it with wrong information. Integrity, that's the same type of thing. Like, how do you break the system so that it's not going to give you the right information out? How do you abuse it? Well, we already seen people abuse it by creating receipts, right? That's one way that you can abuse it. So how else might they abuse that? So those are things that you want to make sure that anytime that you look at any of these type of AI systems, you want to ask them, especially if they're baking it into your finance system, is like, how are we addressing all of these risks, right? Part of your risk management, right? So how are you addressing those risks? A little bit more simple way of looking at it, and just to make a little thing, when you think of your large language model type of AI systems, like chat GPTs and stuff like that, you have the training and training data, and then you have the inference engine. And those two, let's separate those into two different buckets with that little dotted line there. And if you look at that, you see the training data. What if your training data is bad, right? What if the network information that it has on your network is bad? What if you have access to it? So here's a good example where this data that AI is learning from, if it has access to everything that's in your network, it's going to find all that information. And then when somebody uses it, it may use that information. So here's one story that we recently heard. And somebody had decided they were going to use AI to write it that they had low inside their system. I don't know if it was Google or Microsoft, it was one of those, but they were going to write an email to their doctor, their personal doctor. So they were out at work on a work machine doing personal stuff. I know they shouldn't do that, but they were. So they're asking, hey, I need to write a letter to my doctor telling them that my ankle hurts and then I need to get, in to see them or whatever, because they were going to send them an email. So that training information that system had access to all of the city's internal documents. And so it came back and drafted a letter, and the letter had a doctor's name on it, not the person's doctor, and referenced a slip and a fall that somebody had had, and a case number. So it got all that from HR, from another accident case that was a workers' comp case, and it pulled that information into that person's email. That person was not supposed to have access to that information. So you have to be careful about how this training process on the backside of this, how it is protected. And so that means you have to have good data governance, and most local governments don't have great data governance. Sorry. That means all your documents, they have the life cycle, when they're supposed to expire, and you also know how they're supposed to be protected and who's not supposed to have access to what data. And sometimes we just put it in big buckets. Like, how many of you have a finance share and everybody in finance could go to that share? Question is, do they need to have access to all that? Because when you leave it open to that, that means anything that's in that finance share that anybody in finance is going to use, that AI also can see and can pull that information out. So you just have to be careful about that. Now, the inference engine, that's how you put inputs, how you ask the question so you get the information out the right way. And so there's ways to trick the AI system to do things that it's not supposed to do. Sometimes they call it hijacking or jailbreaking AI, or just coercing AI to do something it's not supposed to, like write a mean letter to your boss threatening them. It's not going to do that, but there's certain ways that some AIs people figure out how to ask the question in such a way that the AI will actually do that email, right? And it's not supposed to. So that just gives you kind of an idea that you have the information that it's going to draw from, and then you have the way it processes that information. And you can attack both of those or abuse both of those to get AI to do all kinds of crazy things. I'm not going to get into this, but for your IT folks, if you share this, you can give them this. This is the way that we as cyber folks kind of look at the threats to AI. So you can see there's a whole bunch of them there, and you're not meant to read any of that stuff. That's just to give you an idea, like to go, whoa, there's a lot to this. And yes, there is a lot to this. And this is where you're going to find that there's this disconnect between IT and the rest of the organization, because this is a cyber risk issue. And so most IT folks may not be tracking this. The good ones are going to be tracking it, but it's really outside of their wheelhouse. It's not necessarily like if you're looking at a new ERP system and it has AI built into it, do you even have IT staff that's capable of understanding what these risks are and knowing whether that's going to be a risk to you, right? So that's really becomes down to the question. And what most people are starting to understand today is that IT is like this big, right? It covers all these things, but cyber risk is actually bigger and goes outside of IT. Because if you look at IT risk, when I was at the city of Livermore, I wasn't even a part of IT. I was separate from IT because a lot of what I actually dealt with, in fact, I spent more time with the city attorney, risk management, HR, because all these other types of cyber risks are outside of normal purview of IT. Everything from counter espionage types of things. That's like a whole new big area because we have a nation state that is trying to get folks into networks working here in the United States. North Korea has been doing a lot of that with remote work. So that's a very popular one right now. But the idea is, think about this. Cyber is usually a little bit bigger than IT, so you have to make sure you're doing this. So how many of you heard about, was it Palo Alto? Sorry if I throw you under the bus, but this is in the news. Someone hacked into their street systems, so the lights, to walk or don't walk, and they changed the voice on it. So instead of saying walk, it was Elon Musk's voice saying something, or the Facebook guys saying something. So how did that get done? IT wasn't involved in it because that's public works issue, right? But that's technology and that's cyber risk. And somebody didn't look at the cyber risk. And so I think that what the news said was that it was a third-party vendor who helped set up the traffic control system, right? So think about those type of things. That's something that IT would never have caught. And Public Works probably doesn't know that they need to look at that. Well, they do now. And hopefully now you all know, right? So cyber risk is sometimes wider than that. And when it comes to AI, it is definitely wider than that. So you want to take advantage of that. Second poll question, if you'd like to launch that question for us.
Yep, just launched.
How confident are you in identifying AI-generated phishing messages? Now, that's a good one. Why you answer that question? I'll tell you a little story about that. We had when I was at the city, we have a system, and it had AI-generated phishing tests. So I turned it on for a week just to see how it was. I told everybody we were doing a test, not to freak out. It was really good because it knew that you were talking with somebody about something. It would send you an email that looked like it was from that person, but wasn't. And it looked like it was part of the conversation or something that might have been in the conversation. So that was actually very scary. And so somewhat confident, that's good. I'm glad to see that most people feel that way. Remember the old days, with some Nigerian prince and he told you had money, right? Well, and it was really bad grammar and you could tell that. But today, what we have is that grammar problem is not an issue anymore because AI can generate it. I could write a Russian phishing email, and I don't speak Russian, right? Because I just go to AI and tell it to write it in Russian. I can tell it what I want in English and then say, hey, make this in Russian and make it localized for wherever, and it'll do that. Also, they have the capability of interacting with you directly with the phishing thing so that the hacker does not have to interact with you. So like send you a text messages, and let's say you get a text message out of the blue and says, hey, you have a ticket and you need to pay it. Otherwise you're going to have we're going to send you or send the cops to take you to jail, right? Whatever. So if you respond to it and say, what ticket, you can actually have AI responding to it instead of a real life person. So one person can actually have hundreds of those little bots out there doing all those conversations with all those people. And so think about it. This AI gives you the ability to be more productive. AI gives the threat actors a way of being more productive in a bad way. So think about that. So what else is coming? Who knows? They're going to figure something out that we haven't thought of yet, because that's what they do. Now they have the capability of doing vulnerability research, so they can actually go in and have AI look at the code that you have and actually look to see if they can break into your system. And we've actually seen where this has actually spiked. We were able to see that phishing attempts and using AI kind of coincided with each other. And so this vulnerability research, you see the red line that goes up. Using AI, which came out about 2020, when AI came out, when people started using it for doing vulnerability research, you see that there was a big, huge spike in vulnerabilities being the number one way that people were breaking into systems. You see it's still higher and has been for the last couple of years than phishing, like we talked about earlier. But you notice that there was a big spike as soon as AI came onto the thing. Now it's kind of dropped down. Why did it drop down? Well, a lot of the AI systems have locked their systems out so that threat actors cannot use them to do vulnerability research or to write, breaks for that. But don't worry, there is actually bad versions of ChatGPT that are online that do not have, they've been jailbroke, so to speak. So they don't have those problems of hacking, right? So they're not going to be stopped by the system from hacking. So you actually have chatbots that are set up for bad guys that will do bad things that the good ones won't. So that's where we're at with that. So now you have threat actors who they don't have to be sophisticated. For example, if I want to be a hacker, I don't have to know how systems work to figure out how to break into it. I can say, hey, go to this IP address. This is the city's financial system. Try and break into it, with some of these, and it can just run. It can run after that and then try to find vulnerabilities and try to exploit those. It'll look for all the common stuff, obviously, SQL injections, buffer overflows, stuff that you typically have. It'll find it and it can help you exploit it. So this is an area that we now we have that. We have AIs now. We have robots, kind of, not robots physically yet, but we have robots, that are actually doing stuff for people now. And then what about AI for disruption, right? We've seen a lot of things. This is from Stanford, and this is not CISA's statement or my statement. This is just what Stanford University came up with. And it said AI systems are being used in the service of disinformation on the internet, giving them potential to become a threat to democracy and tool for fascism, from deepfake videos to online bots manipulating public discourse by feigning consensus or spreading fake news. There is a danger of AI systems undermining social trust. The technology can be co-opted by criminals, rogue states, ideological extremists, simple special interest groups to manipulate people for economic gain or political advantage. And so there you go. Like, we don't have enough things to worry about without having to add that onto it. Now, we talked about data poisoning, and that's still going to be one of those big areas. We got to make sure that the data that our AI has is good. But think about this. it has access to all the data that you have in your systems. So let's say you have a bunch of stuff in SharePoint. What if you have a bunch of stuff in your SharePoint that is outdated information? What if you have a bunch of draft things that are not correct? Something later came on, but you still have those drafts in there. AI reads that, understands that that's a part of it, and may respond with information it got from that document. That becomes a really difficult thing. If I was an employee inside of a city and I want to screw that up, I could just make a bunch of documents with a bunch of fake information in it. And it'll come back and find that information and then respond to it. What if it's just draft information? It's not malicious, it's just there. A good example of this, I was at a city the other day, and when they were showing me, he said, look, I'm going to go to AI and say, hey, write a letter to the mayor. And it kept on coming up with the previous mayor and not the current mayor. Now, why did it do that? Because all the documents are in SharePoint that had the mayor's name on it has the old mayor's name on it, not the new mayor's name on it, because the new mayor just got elected, right? So you have to, when you have that data, you're going to have to manage it, right? So you're going to have to create a document and then point AI to that document and say, this is the current council, right? And then tell it, if you're responding with any of these official positions, these are the current people. You have to do extra work to make sure that AI knows what it's supposed to do. Now, hopefully, your staff knows, and you've had training with them, that they are supposed to check all the facts before they do it, right? So that's part of watching out for data poisoning. So we have our next poll line.
All right. Launching poll number 3. Launch.
So if you have your own personal AI assistant, what would you have it do first? I don't know. It can't cook for you, unfortunately, yet. But the Jetsons day is coming someday soon, right? The Jetsons, you guys remember the Jetsons? I just saw that the other day. I watched it when they got Rosie the maid, the robot. What would you have? I don't know what I would have it do. I usually have it tone my emails down and make them more professional sounding, which is a good idea. All right. Do you have the result? You want to show the results?
All right. End poll. Share results.
Write emails. That's defend me from cyber threats. I like that one. And we do actually have, there are some that are out there. I'll just throw that out there for you, that there are some AI systems that are now being added to the cybersecurity stack that your IT people may be asking you to invest in. It's probably a really good idea, because the only thing that's going to be able to counter AI attack is an AI, right? And so human beings are not going to be able to process the information necessary to understand everything that's going on the network. You're going to have AI do that. It's just too much. It's always been too much information for. If I showed you how many logs all the systems on a city or a district's systems, you would be overwhelmed. And IT staff is usually ignoring them because they would be overwhelmed. So you have to have some type of system that can look at all of that stuff. We used to have some system that looked for signatures, but now we have AI that can look for weird stuff out of the normal stuff, right? So good things to go. So prompt-based attacks, this is where they attack the prompt, writing it. So there's a whole new job, prompt engineer. Yes, there's a job for that. How to write something, a question to generative AI to get it to give you the right answer, right? So how many of you tried it and you got the wrong answer? Sometimes you have to be a lot more descriptive about it. You have to tell AI you want it to be very you have to tell AI that you want it to be very accurate. Otherwise, it can make stuff up. So you want to be careful about that. It very much wants to please you. And if you asked it for some information and it doesn't have it, it will invent information for you. That's on the hallucination side, which is my next slide. It'll do that, right? It will make up whatever it needs in order to do that. It'll make up another person. If it's supposed to send an email to a person, that person's not doesn't exist anymore, it'll make that person up. And we've seen a AI bot do that. So anyways, so hallucinations, that's one of the things you have to be careful about. That's where you're going to make sure that you have some kind of training to tell people, hey, look at this. Can you imagine your financial statements and having AI read that and summarize it? Guarantee you're going to have a council member that's going to do that, right? So you might want to run that through AI and see what it summarizes and see if that summary is accurate from what it reads. Because it may not be accurate because there's a lot of tables in there, and depending on the formatting, the AI may not recognize the formatting and may misinterpret information. So on financial sides, it's going to be a little bit, you're going to really have to do your diligence to check that information and make sure that it's going to be correct. You're also going to have to deal with the record management, which you kind of talked about earlier. Make sure that whatever your records retention cycle is, you create it, you use it, and then you get rid of it or you archive it out. You're probably going to want to make sure that you actually archive things away that are no longer used so that they're available for public records requests, but they're not available for AI anymore, right? Because if it's information that's no longer accurate, like, the mayor from 4 mayors ago, right? Whatever. You want to make sure that that kind of information kind of gets separated out and is not being used by the AI to answer some of its questions. Now, if you're asking for the history of all the mayors for the city, it's not going to have that information, but you probably don't have that document. And if you do have that document, then maybe it would find it. But so you're going to watch a part of what you have to do with your record management now, and this is probably something more for the city clerk, but that this management process is going to have to take into consideration now another factor, which is AI, and does AI have access to it? And is AI going to use this information to generate results? So not necessarily finance's problem, but it is going to be an issue for records retention for sure. Now, one thing that CISA has had for a while is we have a carrot and stick approach. We are not regulators. We're not law enforcement. We are advocates for you, and they try to help you become more cyber safe. The way that we do that is with the carrot. Everything that CISA recommends is just a recommendation. That's it. We don't have any standards. We just have a recommendation. One of the things that we understand is that you as an organization should not bear all of the problems that the software developers have in not making good software, making vulnerable software from day one, right? So what we're asking from the carrot approach is asking them to follow our secure by design pledge. We have a pledge, and if they follow it, they can sign up for it, and then they have to turn over to us on a regular basis their progress on doing all of the things that we know are good to do to help make your system secure. You shouldn't have to be worrying about patching things. It shouldn't have to be patched because it should have been coded in the right way the first time. And so this Secure by Design initiative that CISA has is focused on that. It's the carrot approach, not the stick approach. So how can you use this in your procurement process? When somebody wants to go and buy something, you should consider cybersecurity and cyber risk as a part of the purchasing process. One of the questions you can ask is, have you signed the Secure by Design pledge? And if they haven't, give them 1 point less, or if they have, give them 1 point more, right? Also, if it's a system and it's maintaining data that needs security on it, you should probably look for an external audit or something along those lines from it. So consider those things. That Secure by Design is what we're really looking for, right? And want to make sure that they're doing secure things. AI should be secure as well. It's just like any other application. We want to make sure that they're taking care of it. Now, there's an AI risk management framework that NIST has, and so you can use this to help your IT folks or your governance or your cyber person, if you have one, to help them understand what they need to do about mitigating the risks. There is a government AI coalition that exists, so you can take a look at it. It's hosted at the San Jose City of San Jose's website. They have some guidelines for how to use it. So it's worth taking a look at what they have. They can help you ask the right questions, know the right things to do. We also have artificial intelligence at DHS. We had something that came out in January 2025 that it had a lot of information about how you can use generative AI and how you can deploy it, and how we deployed it here at the federal government. With the changing of administration, some of this has been deprecated. It's still on the website. You should still be able to have access to it. But there's definitely a change in focus happening. And then engaging with artificial intelligence, some other types of things you can do from CISA's point of view or our stuff, but also we have partners, and don't be afraid to look at some of our partners. And who's some of our partners? Australia. They actually have a really good website that talks about engaging with artificial intelligence. And the federal government doesn't have to be the best every time, and sometimes another government might be better. And so we'll share that information with our definitely the five, we call them Five Eyes, the five countries that we do a lot of sharing with when it comes to threat intelligence. But Australia is one of those. They have some really good information. You want to check that out if you need more information on AI. Let's do our last poll and then we'll finish up.
All right, launching poll 4.
Is your organization currently using or piloting AI tools? Yes, you're using it. You're in a pilot or a test phase. No, not yet. No current plans, not sure. If you don't mark yes, actively using it, you probably are, because your employees are probably using it without your knowledge. So that's one of the things about it. It's just one of those things. It's disruptive technology. Everybody wants to use it, and they're going to use it. Do you want to close this one out? Are we got enough people?
Yeah, I think we're good to end. Share results.
Few people are using it. We got most people are in a pilot or testing phase, or they have no current plans. I'm going to tell you this. You remember there used to be a day when we had typewriters. And I remember I had this guy that I used to work for, and we got a new computer, and he says, I'm never going to use this computer. I'm never going to use it because I don't need it, whatever. I got a typewriter. What do I need that for? If I told you that today, you'd think I was insane, right? Because computers have changed the way we do things. AI is going to change it. And if you fall behind, you're going to be way behind. So I recommend that you at least get to the point where you're piloting it, testing it, or planning it. Your organization should be moving in that direction, because it's going to be a game changer, and it's going to change everything. It's going to change the way we do a lot of stuff. Hopefully for the better. Cross our fingers for that. And so a lot of different on the slides. So they put the slides in the chat, so you can click on that. If you have any questions, ask them now. Otherwise, here's the information that you have if you wanted to check out any of those things that I mentioned in there. And that is it. I'm right about on time, I think.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you everyone for all your questions. And I know Whitney has put the survey in the chat several times, so you should be able to reach that. But thanks again, Dawn. Always very interesting and important.
Gary?
So and scary, yes.
Sorry.
All right. Now everyone go have a good lunch. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.